Well, some of you guys may have noticed this bike in the background of some of the videos that I've done in the past. And that's because it's been hanging around my garage for the last 6 to 8 months. I've been waiting for the right time to work on it, and I think that time is now. But truth be told, it's not really my bike. This bike belongs to a very good friend of mine. His name's Nick. Unfortunately, Nick is no longer with us.
We have a military aircraft down Highway 78, just west of Coachella Canal Road.
Starting with breaking news, military officials are confirming to CBS 8 that 5 U.S. Marines are dead. They were all on board a Marine transport aircraft when they went down in that desert.
A Marine from New Hampshire is among the 5 who were killed when their Osprey aircraft crashed in Southern California on Wednesday. He's identified as 31-year-old Captain Nicholas Lasapio of Rockingham, New Hampshire. Lasapio was a pilot in the 3rd Aircraft Division.
Nicholas Lasapio, or as he was known in the Marine Corps, Captain Nicholas Lasapio, was one of 5 Marines killed in an Osprey crash in the California desert last June. I'm proud to say that I had the pleasure of calling Nick my friend for the better part of 20 years. I don't think we could have been more than 12 years old when we met. I knew Nick best for his infectious smile, his one-of-a-kind booming laugh, and his light-up-the-entire-room personality. Nick was the kind of person that could be friends with anyone. Despite being one of the nicest guys you could ever possibly meet, Nick was a badass. After graduating from Norwich University in Vermont, Nick joined the Marine Corps. He then went to flight school and got his wings in 2016 and never stopped improving his flying skills. When I asked Nick what kind of planes he was flying, he told me they were the ones that looked like they were flexing, also known as the MV-22B or Osprey. Nick served multiple overseas tours, had over 1,350 flight hours, including 183 hours flying combat missions through his overseas deployments. Nick succeeded in his goal of becoming one badass Osprey pilot, respected and admired by many. Above all, Nick loved his family, he loved his friends, and he's dearly missed by all of us. We lost a good one. In remembrance of the 5 Marines lost that day, I've decided to donate 100% of the profits from this video to the Captain John J. Sax Foundation. Captain John Sax was the co-pilot flying with Nick that day, and his foundation serves to support those who choose to further their education, exploration, and passion for flight within the United States military. I'll leave a link in the description below to this foundation if you'd like to donate yourself. So, how does the bike relate to this tragedy, for lack of a better term? Well, Captain Nicholas Lasapio's grandfather was Captain John Henry Noble. And Captain John Henry Noble was a big reason why Nick decided to become a pilot in the first place. He wanted to follow in his grandfather's footsteps. John was a pilot stationed in Okinawa in the 1950s, and he needed a way to get from the plane to the barracks or the barracks to the plane. So evidently, he built this. And it reliably got him from the plane to the barracks and back and forth for many years. But after retiring from the Air Force and coming back to civilian life, he took the bike with him and handed it down to his children, which would be Nick's mother and her siblings. Well, over the years, it's fallen into a bit of a state of disrepair, unfortunately. But I think it's time that we get this thing back going again. Nick's family reached out to some people in the community to see if we could get this thing running again. And obviously, we jumped at the opportunity to do so. It's been a really tough year. It's been a tough year coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Nick's passing, and you know, everyone deals with grief in their own way. This has been. I've been waiting for the right time to work on this thing. It's just been tough, you know. And but I just Memorial Day was the other day, and like I said, the 1-year anniversary is coming up, and it's really time to give this thing what it deserves. I can't think of a better way to honor Nick, to honor his family, to honor his grandfather, and to just keep his service memory and Nick's memory alive. So that's a story with this bike. I have been patiently waiting to go through it with you guys. I've wanted to kind of pick at it and see what the deal with it is, if I could start ordering some parts, but I wanted it to be official that you guys would go through it with me at the same time. So this is it. This is exactly how I received this bike. One of the other people in the community, a younger kid who's trying to learn about motors, had taken a stab at it late last summer, and he allegedly got it running, but had to go back to school and wasn't able to get much farther than that, at which point I kind of tossed it in the bed of my pickup truck and took it home, and have not touched it since then. Other than that, it's just been leaking fuel and oil all over my garage, and I've just been kind of pushing it around from one spot to another as projects come in and out. But yeah, it's time to get to work on this thing. Let's get in here, get a closer look, see what this thing is all about. So just to reiterate, what you guys now know about this bike is also how much I know. I called Nick's mom, been very close with her for many years, and she gave me as much information as she could on this thing. But as far as how it was built or specifics of what's on it, no idea. So we're gonna get into this together. Let's figure it out. If anyone has any specific things that they might notice about the bike, feel free to comment down below. Love to know anything that there is to know about this thing, but let's do a walk around. So here she is. At first glance, from what I can tell, this looks like it was a kid's bike, like bicycle frame, that has been modified for use as now a pit bike or mini bike. And by modified, I mean it looks like, if we remove the fender here, which is broken off, rear fender, it looks like the frame has been extended via welding on this steel, plate here. And then obviously we've got some sort of motor here. I have actually Googled as much as information as there is on this serial number here, or this plate here. So apparently it's a Cat 2-stroke motor. Again, can't find any information on it. We know it's probably from the 1940s or 1950s. It's got a pull cord, single cylinder, obviously. But yeah, could not find it. I don't know if it's from a chainsaw. There's literally no information on it. Same thing, we've got some sort of gearbox with shifter here. Definitely an old bicycle seat. These might be the original handlebars from the bicycle. Not entirely sure. Got a headlight retrofitted on there. Some sort of pegs welded on here. Carburetor. I was looking earlier to see if I could get a part number off this carburetor. Chain drive from the motor to the gearbox, and then from the gearbox to the rear wheel. Controls all completely shot. None of these, a couple of the cables are either loose or completely broken. Wiring's shot, seat is shot. Tires, I don't know if they even hold air, but they're not looking so great. Got a fuel line that looks like it's made out of brass. Almost looks like a ice cube feed line that you'd find in your freezer. Got a shut-off valve for the fuel here that has probably and definitely been leaking all over my floor all winter. I don't think there's any fuel left in the tank. That's why I've had this rag over here. This is completely saturated with oil and fuel. I just kind of move it around with the bike. Got some sort of little generator here, which probably would have powered the taillight and the headlight. A couple parts came with it. This is a new control cable, throttle, brake, clutch, whatever it is. I guess this would have gone on here and then also on here, but it seems like it's way too long. So we'll have to, I don't even know what you call this belt. It looks like a vacuum hose, but it's obviously a complete circle. So not sure what you'd call this, but we're gonna have to research that a little bit. Fuel's probably old. I don't know if there's rust in the tank there. Front wheel does spin freely. Seems like the motor rotates over, so it's not seized. So that's good. But yeah, here's our blank canvas and our starting point. The bike is, what, 70 years old at this point, probably? So I don't know what else you would expect, but it needs some help, and that's what we're here to do. Alright guys, quick side note. So Nick's mom, Susie, later informed me that her dad's bike was featured in Popular Mechanics magazine back when he built it, which would have been late 1950s. And she was actually able to find the magazine in the archives from November 1959 that included the small article on her dad John's mini bike. And I just think this is so cool. We can see a picture of John on this bike. Even though it's in black and white, you can clearly see the tires, the chain drive that we've seen, the generator, and this fully grown man riding this bike. And basically the article says that the bike will do 25 miles an hour, that John was 205 pounds, so we know that it can support a good amount of weight, and he was stationed in Okinawa, which we already knew. Per my suspicion, this was a discarded small bicycle frame that was modified, added some parts, added a 1 horsepower engine. These were wheelbarrow tires, and within a month he had built this thing for under $75. Noble had a difficult time registering it with the motor vehicle authorities. It was finally logged as a homemade vehicle. Holds only a gallon of gas and runs 10 days on a full tank. It cost me $1 per month to run. So pretty cool, guys. I just think this is so awesome that we're able to find an actual picture of John on the bike, and also featured in a magazine, which was very, very popular back in 1959. So now we know a little bit more history on the bike and actual photographic evidence of it being from 1959. So as I think I mentioned, there was a younger kid in the community that tried to tackle this late last summer, and I never saw it run, but he said that he was able to get it running. I mean, it's 2-stroke. You know, I bet you if we pour some fuel down the carb, we might be able to get it to turn over, and it might run, which is exactly what we're going to do, because the most important thing is see if we can get this thing running. So before I blow this thing apart and try and start restoring it, we want to make sure it runs. So let's do that first. Let's see if we can't get some fuel in the carb, see if it turns over, see if we can't get this thing to fire off. In gear or something? There we go. All right, so it seems to pull over. The pull start's a little finicky, but motor rotates freely. I think we're in neutral here. I've got some 2-stroke gasoline mixed up like 40-to-1. I'm just gonna spray it down the carb and we'll see what happens. All right, I guess she runs. Well, seeing as this thing runs seemingly as long as there's fuel, I've decided to mix up a little bit of 2-stroke mixture here, put it in the tank, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if this thing stays running. There's some throttle there. Woo! All right. Well, you guys heard it here. This thing seems to run well. I was just manipulating the throttle here with my finger. I had to play with the choke a little bit once it was kind of sputtering off. But with constant fuel supply, which appears to already be leaking from those fittings, this thing appears to run. So yeah, pretty cool. Well, that's what I wanted to hear, was that this thing runs. Projects like this, in my opinion, it's good to kind of, it's exciting to just dig in, start tearing stuff apart, but it's always good to hear it run before you start taking stuff apart. That way, if you put it back together, you know it's something, and it doesn't run, it's something that you did, and you can start kind of going down the rabbit hole and figuring out what you changed as opposed to something that might have never run to begin with. Anyways, that's a really good sign. I can't believe it, but the carb still seems to respond to throttle input. The choke works. Everything seems to work. So what I haven't figured out yet is this transmission. There seems to be, like I said, all the control cables are broken. So this is what I would assume would have been some sort of clutch, because if you pull up on this, which is really hard to do with one hand, but it basically brings this ring out, which you can tell this thing was assembled by a pilot. I think this is like aviation wire to keep this from coming off. So good on you, John, for using aviation wire to keep all this stuff tight. But yeah, would love to know more about this transmission. It's got this handle here, which seems to me like it would be a shifter. And it feels like a motorcycle shifter, but it only goes up right now anyways. But this linkage is extremely loose, so I can't really tell what's going on, especially because there's about 16 inches of dirt and dust on this thing. So I think what I'd like to do first is take this thing outside and completely soak it down in degreaser. We'll cover up the carb as best we can and just give it a good wash and see if I can't maybe read any more part numbers off this thing and see what else we can't learn. But the goal here is light restoration. So I'd like to blow this thing down to the frame basically, which shouldn't be all that hard. It's basically just a bicycle with, as far as what I can tell, is a chainsaw motor, just kind of bolted in here, and then a transmission and some tires. So I'd like to blow it all down to the frame, just basically paint everything, clean everything, seal up all the leaks, do new fuel line, basically make this thing look like it probably did back in 1950 with some minor changes here and there. But like I said, to start, I think I'm just going to give it a really good clean, see what other part numbers I can't come up with, and then we'll go from there. Obviously, this is a, knock on wood, hopefully I don't jinx myself here, but this is a pretty simple mechanical bicycle basically here. So I really don't think that I should run into any major mechanical hurdles. I guess we could see. I have no idea if the transmission works, but one thing that could hold us up is parts. So I made a list here of parts that I think right off the bat I'd like to order. Might not need all of them, but it's going to be good to have them. So wheels and tires. I think the wheels are probably fine, but the tires are old, and especially on the back, kind of bald on the side. So, and I think these are probably just like lawnmower tires. They're probably like $10 each. So get a set of tires for it. I wrote down carb and rebuild kit. The carb seems to work fine, but I was able to find a rebuild kit for this exact carb. I think it's like $35. So I think I'm going to order one of those just in case. That's one of those things where if we get this all done and it turns out there's a problem with the carb, but hate to have to wait 4 or 5 days or whatever to get a carb rebuild kit. So I think I'm just going to order one of those. New fuel lines. You can see that one is actively already leaking on my garage floor. Got to figure out this generator belt situation to power our tail light and headlight, which are also on there. Gonna have to get a new seat. This one is extremely shot. Controls and cables, like I said, so it looks like we're gonna have clutch, rear brake, and throttle, all of which are gonna have to be run up here somehow. Gasket paper, probably have some of that or have to pick some of that up just in case there's some gaskets in here that we're not seeing. And I wrote down handlebars just in case these were compromised, but I'm not sure yet. We'll see, but I think that's a good starting list. So I'm gonna get some of that stuff on order so that while we're working, we know that that stuff's on the way and we won't be hopefully waiting on parts too much. But yeah, let's soak this thing down in degreaser, get it outside, get it power washed, and see what we're dealing with. All right, guys, next day here, we got this thing completely power washed, degreased, as best I could anyways. There's some stuff that you can see, it's literally dirt and sand and 50, 60 years of stuff that's just been caked on there. I still don't see any markings on the transmission. Like I said, this is caked on, but I might be able to once I get everything torn down. But anyways, I always like to start almost all my projects with like a clean slate. And this is a good start. Also took the seat off, so you can see this thing is pretty well toasted, old style spring seat. But what I'd like to do next is start tearing this thing down. Like I said, the plan is to tear this thing down to the frame and do a budget, but also complete restoration. But real quick before I do that, I think I'm going to take some approximate measurements for controls cables here. So for throttle, the brake cable actually still works, so we might be good there. And then I guess clutch. I guess this is a clutch cable, so take some rough measurements from there. And then we'll be ready to tear this thing down. So it's going to be fun. Go basically from how it is now to a completely bare frame, and we can maybe find out a little bit more about the transmission and some other components. But let's get to work. There you have it. Down to nothing in under an hour. Not that we expected it to take a long time. The thing was just bolted together with basic hand tools, so no real surprise there. But yeah, I think this is about as far as I'm gonna take it down. Can't really take this stem out because one of the controls things was welded on there, and that's fine. Like I said, we're not going for a show quality restoration here. We're just gonna do our best to clean it up. A lot of this is just flaking off, and yeah, but we're down to the bare frame, so we can kind of start cleaning stuff, get ready for some paint. Just a couple things to note. Got the transmission out, and again, got to clean some of this off so we can maybe find some more information on it. This was kind of wedged in to the transmission between the mounting bracket here and where the transmission was. I don't know if that was by accident or just a backyard way of kind of adjusting the angle of the transmission, but we'll put that aside for now. Here's your electrical tape and block of wood that was used, I think, for holding the generator taut against the frame. That works. But yeah, I think we're ready to take this outside, probably pressure wash it again. Same thing with the transmission, maybe the motor again, we'll see. And really go to town, wire wheeling this thing, removing all this grime, rust, as much as we can to get ready for paint here. I'm gonna need to do some research on these throttle controls. It's like an old school vintage style where the ball kind of goes through this little hook thing, and then these things hook on here. So I got to figure out what those are called and where I can order them. Obviously I could do all new controls. I think this is just a standard 7/8 handlebar, but I kind of like these vintage, wire pulls here, or spring pulls that kind of follow the curve of the handlebar. I think that's cool. So one thing I think I'm going to change though is I think the throttle was over here, and it was kind of really close to, this would have been the clutch, I guess. So I think in like most motorcycles, your throttle's over here. So I think I'm gonna move the throttle over here. I might even do like a thumb throttle. So this will be your thumb throttle, rear brake, and then clutch over here. The clutch on a motorcycle is typically always on the left side anyways. So I think that'll work. But like I said, I would like to save these. We'll see. But yeah, let's do some more cleaning, clean up the frame. Yeah, maybe even throw a coat of paint on there. It looks like this bike frame was originally some sort of silver. And I have plenty of silver paint, and I think we can go back with that. And that's the way it was done back in the 50s. That's the way I'm going to do it right now. I think it'll look nice. I'm going to inspect all these welds. Nothing against you, John, but I think some of these could be better. I don't know what kind of welding technology they had back in the 50s, but we could probably reinforce these a little bit just where the frame was extended here, just to make sure it's safe. Other than that, everything else looks pretty good, like the motor mount plate and the rest of the welds on the frame. But yeah, let's clean this up, maybe do some welding, get it ready for paint, and we'll get to the rest of these parts as well. status update. Frame is pretty much ready for paint, I think. So as you guys saw, I got the frame completely power washed and degreased again. Also spent some time with the wire wheel and got off all the flaking chrome, loose paint, all that nasty stuff. Just get this thing as clean as possible so that the paint can properly adhere to it. Also decided to reinforce some of the welds that were on this thing, as I mentioned. I mean, they held up for like 7 years. They probably would have been fine, but you know, while we're here, might as well reinforce them. So I added some strength to the areas that look like the welds needed a little bit of help. Also found the bracket that held on the rear fender. Apparently that had fallen off at one point. My guess is that John, welded this all together when he had access to a welder on the base. And then this must have fallen off. This bracket must have fallen off at one point when he was back home and he didn't have access to a welder. So that's what this was. Looks like he, tried to fabricate some sort of aluminum thing here that grabbed on here to support the rear fender when he didn't have a welder anymore. But no big deal. This thing is absolutely not going anywhere anymore. This should outlast the bike at this point, so that's good to go. Other than maybe we might have to do little things for cables. We'll see, but I think that other than that, we're done with welding on this thing, so we're ready for some paint, which is good because I've got about 7 different variations of metallic silver here from various projects over the years, whether it's engine paint or wheel paint. They're all about a third full, so it'd be great to use up some of these. And I think, like I said, the bike was originally silver. It looks like it'd be great to go back with like a metallic silver on the whole thing. Before we do any of that, we'll hit the whole bike with etching primer, give the paint a good surface to bond to. I was going to try and save the chrome up here. Did some test areas with steel wool and also some Scotch-Brite. Unfortunately, I think that some areas like this are just too far gone. We can't bring that back. Same thing on these controls here, which I took apart. So I think what we're gonna do on the handlebars and stem there is I'll just mask right here, right at the joint, and we'll do the handlebars in like a flat black. I think that'll contrast nicely with the frame of the bike. Did a final degrease on the motor and also the transmission. I cannot for the life of me find out what this thing is. The only thing I was able to uncover is this M like triangle logo and the number 210, which, obviously Google doesn't come up with a whole lot on that. So if you guys know what this thing is, let me know. It looks like it's a 2 or a 3 speed. I'll probably disassemble it a little bit, see if I can figure out how it works, but we'll get to that. Also got one of the wheels and tires off. This is like a 4-ply tire. It could probably hold up an aircraft carrier. You can see I kind of hacked it apart trying to get it off the wheel. I was bending my tire irons. That thing was absolutely not coming off until I realized this is a 2-piece wheel. So this thing came apart. There was no need to even use my tire irons. And in the process, I destroyed this tube. So no big deal on the tire. Needed a new one anyways. I'll get a set of tubes for it. But now I know. 2-piece wheel, whatever. But yeah, all that being said, I'm gonna do a final scuff on the frame, a final degrease, do some masking, we'll get the frame painted. Maybe we'll get a couple of these engine parts painted as well, just because we can. And maybe we'll start a little bit of reassembly. But yeah, let's do some paint prep and get to painting. Tin Man was into mini bikes, bet she'd be digging this paint job. Got the whole frame of the bike painted. As I mentioned, I had a bunch of leftover silver metallic paint, so I figured that's kind of close to what the original color was, so that's what we went with. I was thinking about doing the handlebars black, but decided against that kind of at the last minute. So now everything is silver. Also added some engine paint to the engine, but I did mask off the serial tag here, the serial number. It's got some good information on it, and I just think it's cool, including some starting instructions, the serial number, even though I can't find anything on it, the model number, same thing, but adds a little bit of contrast. Painted the recoil black, so that'll go on there. Same thing with the muffler, or whatever you want to call this thing. Same thing with the gear on the transmission, which I figured out, by the way. I think it's a 2-speed, so basically that's first gear, middle is neutral, and then the one all the way down is going to be high gear. So I think it's a 2-speed, plus neutral, and then there's your clutch, which kind of disengages this gear. Added some black on the gear itself to, again, for some contrast. So I think we're just about ready for reassembly here. Also got some parts flowing in. Got a brand new seat, taillight, got some gasket paper just in case we need to make any assorted various gaskets. This stuff is going to be an experiment. This is some material that I bought to hopefully make a belt for that generator, since I couldn't find, the correct length belt that was complete, or even really what that belt was. I did some research on what the belt that was on there originally was, and I think it's actually from a dryer or something like that. I got some new grips, new fuel line, fuel filter, shutoff valve for fuel, various fuel fittings, and I think I mentioned this earlier, I was able to find a carb rebuild kit for the carb. So even though the bike did run and seemed to run okay, I figured it wouldn't hurt to go through the carb and just make sure it's all clean, good to go. And tires, although you'll only see one here, and that's because I already got one of them mounted. Just wanted to see how it was going to work out. So as I mentioned earlier, I split the wheel, put a tube in here, got the tire mounted, good to go. Brand new tire. I'm going to paint the wheels the original color that John, I believe, would have painted these things, which is red. So now that this is all back together, it'll be super easy to just mask this off, paint this red, and we'll have a brand new set of wheels and tires. So I still got to do the other one, get the tube in there, but should be good to go on that front. So we got plenty of work to do on this thing, so let's not waste any time. Let's get right back to work. Let's start reassembling this bike, get some paint on those wheels, get the wheels and tires mounted, and maybe start throwing some of those new parts at it, take a look at the carb, and all the other stuff we gotta do, but let's get back to work. Shoo! Oh man, just like that, we are going back together. Hopefully you guys could see it on video, but getting those old tires off was an absolute struggle. Multiple tools broke in, multiple swears, throwing, just an absolute scene here, but got it done. Got our brand new tires on there. Nick's family has since moved to a dirt road, so I figured these kind of off-road-ish tires would be a better fit than the on-road ones that were on there. Fresh coat of red paint. Got tubes in there, inflated to like 30 PSI. These things will, same as the other ones, they're like 4-ply, would hold up way more than this bike would be safe for riding. Same thing on the rear. Everything's got a fresh coat of paint, got the drum brake painted black and then reassembled. So we are ready to start assembling this thing. But I got some work to do over here first. As I mentioned, got some paint on the engine and the transmission. Also painted up the recoil, which I need to bolt back onto here. But I'm going to focus on the carb right now. As I mentioned earlier, and as you guys saw, this thing did run and seemed to run pretty well, but this carb is gross. And believe it or not, I was able to find a carb rebuild kit. Came with these extremely blurry instructions, which we can try and follow. But I think my plan right now is to clean this thing up as much as I can and replace as many gaskets as I can, check the floats, check the needles, make sure everything is as clean as possible. Then we'll put it back together, get it back on the motor. Gonna go out and get a new spark plug, bolt the exhaust back on with a new gasket, which should be in here. If not, I got this gasket paper so we can make one. When that's done, we can put all this back in the bike and really get going on reassembly. So let's keep the momentum going. Let's get this thing back together. Boom, carb rebuilds. At least I think I rebuilt it anyways. I don't really know what I'm doing with carburetors. I'm more of a fuel injection kind of guy, but just basically replaced parts that I thought were bad, and I'm glad we did clean this thing out, and there was some nasty stuff in there. Come over here on the bench. Here's all the nasty goop and stuff I took out. A lot of it already cleared away, but you know, a lot of these seals were dried out. A lot of gunk in the carb. So definitely worthwhile for, I think, the 30 bucks that this carb kit costs. Picked up a new spark plug, so we'll put that in when we're ready. Also, got the pull cord back mounted on with some stainless hardware, and even, you know, had some wood stain laying around. Put a nice coat of stain on the wooden ripcord there, so that's nice. But I think at this point, I'm ready to put these back in the frame of the bike and start some reassembly here. So let's keep this pace going. Let's get back to work and get this motor in. Boom, couple of bolts, engine and transmission are back in, got the chain back on there. I did rig up just real temporarily a little bit of fuel line here and filled the bowls, I believe, so we can check for leaks in the carburetor. And I'd also like to try and start it right now, just to make sure the carb is good, make sure we didn't mess anything up, which is entirely possible, but hopefully not. So yeah, maybe we need to make some adjustments with the carb, we'll see, but I'd like to start it right now, make sure, you know, chain alignment is good, chain tension is good, and then we can continue with assembly. But let's pull on this thing a few times and then you know, go from there. Not off to a good start. Go. We run her out of fuel. That's good enough for me. Well, sufficiently smoky in here. Thing runs awesome. That's with zero carb tuning at all. We got still a bunch more adjustments to make, but that's good enough for me. I just actually made another adjustment on the the drive chain adjustment. It was a little loose before. Now it's a little bit tighter. Should be good to go there. So yeah, let's continue with assembly. I got that brand new fuel line. I got to figure out where I want to mount this shutoff valve, probably here-ish somewhere. We can get the other actual drive chain from the transmission to the rear wheel on, and then maybe start working on some of these controls, get our new seat and generator lights. Lots of stuff to do, but we got a running bike again, so let's keep pressing forward. we were making some serious progress on this thing. I know it still looks a little rough around the edges, but we're making headway. This is the part that I was kind of nervous about because I had no idea. There's obviously no part numbers on the old belt, but I found this stuff, and you basically just heat it up, make a belt any length you want, custom length, and then fuse it together just using heat. So this is working out really well so far. Got plenty of that left over, so we got our generator mounted again, which means I decided to start working on lighting. This thing used to have a halogen headlight. Just so happens for a Camaro project that you guys will see on the channel in a little bit, I have an extra Harley, what do you call these? The passing lamp, or side lamps that would go on like a Harley touring bike. Had an extra one of those with the LED halo. So I tested that. This works. My wiring is still very rough right now. Same thing on the back. This thing had a tail light in this spot, but the lens was gone, the bulb was gone. So I went to Harbor Freight, I think it was, and bought this LED trailer light for like $3. And then just extended the wiring a little bit, hooked it up to the generator you guys saw on video. She lights up. So now we got headlights and tail lights on this thing, all powered by this little generator. We'll see how it looks when the bike is on and running, but just pulling it over, you get a flicker from both the front and the rear, so we should be good. Like I said, wiring is rough right now. I'm gonna clean all this up, conduit, secure it nicely, but I wanna wait till I have all my cables run for my controls before I do this, so I don't have to have duplicate zip ties. Which brings us to the next spot. This is another part I was kind of concerned about, is the controls for this bike. So if you guys recall, also got my handlebar controls back on here. Gave those a quick coat of matte black paint, so that looks a little bit cleaner. So those are back on, and if you remember, I think this was brake, this was probably clutch, or maybe this was throttle, this was brake, and then there was another handle that's around here somewhere in this disaster. Oh yeah, right there. There was also over here that was probably brake or something, I don't know. So what I've decided to do is obviously get all new cables because half of them were broken, but I've also decided to switch to a thumb throttle, which I think will work nicer. So you have the way that a regular motorcycle would work is you'd have clutch over here and then front brake over here. There is no front brake on this bike, so we're gonna do clutch over here, front brake over here, and then I'm hoping to use this thumb throttle that I got on Amazon. I built basically this whole bike off Amazon, so if you guys need any of these parts, I'll leave them all linked in the description down below. But this thumb throttle was like 10 or 12 bucks. Got some various cable adapters and stuff, because the other thing I was worried about is these are the old cable controls, how they hook up to the handlebar controls up here. Gonna have to do some custom work there probably, but I measured these, got what I think is like the correct new cables. So we have to hook up throttle, brake, and clutch and get our controls going. So I think I'm gonna tackle that next, see how we get that going. Also, for a couple bucks, picked up an air filter material. So I'm thinking I can just take this thing here. This bike didn't have an air filter on it when I got it, and if it's gonna be on a dirt road, we wanna make sure that the carb's not just sucking down dirt all the time. So I'm gonna see if I can kind of smush this in there and give this engine some protection. So yeah, let's tackle the next hard part of this project, which is gonna be the controls. See if I can't figure it out, see if I can't get clutch, brake, and throttle going together on this bike. we've reached critical mess status here. It's not all the mini bike's fault, but got a couple projects going on here, and quite frankly, it's getting a little out of hand. Look at this disaster. I got 2 welders out. I've used 2 different welders on this bike. Wiring stuff, that's a separate project, but you know, we got some serious mess going on here. Clean that up later. Made some progress on the controls on the mini bike here, so let me show you what we got done. Throttle cable. I still need to clean all this up. I think I'm going to tuck a lot of these like under the gas tank, so this is not the final position of these, but throttle cable, woomba, good to go. New thumb throttle is going to work really well, I think. Also bent this just slightly out, still easily able to grab it, but needed that to do that to, you know, so it doesn't interfere with the thumb throttle there. But I think that's going to work for our brake. And what took the longest here has been the clutch. So this is where the clutch cable would come down, grab that arm, and operate the clutch, which you can now see is working pretty darn well, which pulls out that disc there. You can see some of the clutch material in there. The problem is that I just spent hours last night working on was, as I mentioned, I was trying to not use this original, you know, brake cable handle or whatever. I was going to try and use the original one from the bike. Even welded in this custom bracket, you know, as a cable stop, got this all hooked up. Problem is, this bar had way too much flex. So basically, we were getting to here before the clutch even started moving. And then you bottomed out on the handlebar, and the clutch had just barely started to disengage. So now I'm starting to think that the reason this was here is because John had used this as the clutch handle as well, because this thing is solid steel, absolutely no flex at all, plenty of pull. Problem is, in order to get full pull, you kind of have to pull past the handlebar, which, you know, if you got a reasonably strong hand, it's not that big of a deal. But I honestly don't know how this thing works. Like, I've never ridden this bike, so maybe you only need, you know, this much clutch disengagement in order for it to work. I don't know. But I think I'm going to leave this for now. Of course, we'll paint this and clean up these lines, but as of right now, I had to drill and tap this for the new size cable that I bought. Man, I probably spent an hour just trying to figure out what cables would work for this setup. Still got to do the brake cable over there, but I think that one's going to be easy. The clutch one is definitely going to be the hardest, but I think I have it how I want it now. This should work. If we need more throw, we can make some adjustments and maybe even get a new lever here. But for now, I'm going to say this is good. So up next, let's get the brake cable on there. We'll get the rear wheel on because it's a drum style brake. And we're getting kind of close to going for a test ride, to be honest with you. Just got to get the transmission drive chain on and we'll be good to go. So that probably wasn't a lot of video footage just now, but it literally took all last night. That was the only thing I worked on last night, was those 2 cables. And the throttle cable only took like 10 minutes. So the other hours were spent trying to get that clutch to work properly and fabricating that bracket, and trying to find tools in this disaster, but we got it done. So let's keep pressing forward. Let's get back to work. Well, once again, it's been a couple days, as usually goes in my videos. Gotta do a bunch of work, then come back and bring you guys up to speed. But this thing is starting to look like something again, whatever it looked like before, you know, back in its heyday. It's looking like that, maybe even better. So, to bring you guys up to speed, I think I've got the controls all sorted out. We started with the throttle control, which is now a thumb throttle. Works perfectly over there. Over here, I've got my brake cable all sorted. So that works, stops the tire. Might need some adjustment once we ride this thing, but it does what it's supposed to for now. And what gave me the most trouble was the clutch. But I'm glad I didn't throw away this handle because this thing works perfectly. There's no flex at all in this cable, so you gotta kind of pull it past the bar, which isn't the end of the world. I can maybe still make some adjustments there, but it fully disengages the clutch. You can see that over there, and you can also see it moving right here. So after all that, our controls are basically done. I still need to route these wires in ways that are a little bit cleaner, but I'd like to do that during final assembly. But for now, I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think this thing's ready for a test ride. Got the tank on there temporarily. I had a little bit of a snafu with the recoil here. Ended up breaking the internal spring. Had to take this whole thing apart, realized the spring was broken. I emailed a couple places, small engine repair antique shops on eBay that had a similar looking Schnacky recoil, which is the brand there, if you can read that. And they basically said, yeah, you're out of luck. They don't make those anymore. Best of luck to you. So that was a little disheartening. So I took a day break, kind of thought about it, and I ended up being able to weld and repair the internal spring for now. See how long it lasts, but the recoil is now working again. Did a little bit of carb tuning, and this thing seems to run pretty well. So I think it's time to see if we can get on this thing, take it for its first test drive, and see how it does. First test drive. Couldn't have asked for that test drive to go any better. This thing rips. Probably needs some adjustments on the rear brake and maybe a little bit on the clutch here, but we'll get to that. But I'd like to do the final step of the cosmetic side of this thing, because I know that 157 of you have already wrote in the comments, Chris, you forgot to paint the most important parts, the gas tank and the fenders. And you're right, but I got a plan. Got a plan for this. So let me show you what that plan is. So originally I had thought maybe because these tanks and fenders were blue, I got some nice blue paint that I actually just used on the brake calipers for that car, that I would repaint the tank and the fenders that color blue. But then I got thinking, you know, this bike was built in the 50s. It's now 70 plus years old. It's got patina. And, you know, most of you probably already know where I'm going with this, but there's a story to tell here. You know, maybe this scratch is from when Nick's mom dumped it when she was a kid, or maybe, you know, this is from when he had a bag and it kind of rubbed the paint off right there. Maybe this is from, you know, when Nick put it down in the neighborhood driveway or in the neighborhood sidewalk, you know, 25 years ago. Who knows? But there's a lot of stories that could be told from this tank. And the original paint almost looks like he tried to touch it up right there. There's just a lot of history here on the fenders, all banged up. Same thing on the rear. I think this is a good example of something that we could just clear coat over, preserve this finish. And, you know, this took 70 years to get like this. Sure, I could scuff it up and shoot it with some new paint, cover all that up, and it'd look pretty good. But, you know, that wouldn't take very long. This took 70 years to look like this. So I think that's kind of cool. I think it goes with the whole vintage look that we're going for here. So not only am I going to clear coat it, but I got something really special that I think is going to mean a lot to the family, and that definitely means a lot to me, and I think it's going to really bring this bike home. So I was trying to think of something that I could add to this bike that would make it really special and a really good tribute to not only Nick, but his grandfather and his family, and also the other young men that passed away that day during that training exercise. So I had some custom decals made in the purple font, and that's because of the purple foxes. So this is VMM 364, Marine Medium Tilt-A-Rotor Squadron 364. This is the squadron that Nick flew with out of California, the purple foxes. So I think that this would be really cool as a decal to put on. I think I'm gonna put it right there on the rear fender, and then, you know, we'll clear over it. So as a tribute to his squadron and all the men and women who have served in that squadron. And then as a really personal touch, I had some custom decals made. First, Nick's grandfather, Captain John Henry Noble. That's a guy who built this bike and also inspired Nick to become a pilot himself. So really important to honor John Noble. And then also, of course, Captain Nicholas Peter Lasapio, aka Nick, aka Sloppy. You know, this bike is for you, buddy. So yeah, my plan here is to put one on either side of the tank. So you got Nick on one side and his grandfather John on the other. So I think that will look really nice. And like I said, a nice tribute to both of these gentlemen who served our country. So I've never done a paint job like this before. I usually do, you know, I paint over stuff because I want it to look perfect. So I've never tried one of these patina things before where you basically just clear coat over a bunch of defects. So we'll see how this goes, but I think it's going to be a really special touch, and I'm really looking forward to see how it comes out. So I'm going to start by cleaning these things, getting them as clean as possible, any other prep that I can, you know, think to do, and then we're going to spray on some clear coat, see how they look. Whew. It is hot and humid today. And it was yesterday too. But got the painting done, then let them cure outside in the scorching sun all day today, and then cure most of the night here tonight in the garage. They're ready to go. Check them out. So like I said, never done anything like this before, and I think it came out absolutely perfect. I mean, the tank has got super high gloss. Psyched about how these decals came out. It's like a military font or a military stencil that you'd see, you know, on the side of a plane. I think in the picture, actually, you can see a very similar stencil for the plane that Captain John was flying. And then same thing on Nick's side. Looks really good. We just sealed in all these scratches, all this patina. 70 years worth of stories and, you know, just good stuff. Like I said, hopefully seal this in for another 70 years. Same thing with the sticker on the back. Everything's got a nice high gloss finish and it's now sealed in there, so that's not going to peel off or anything. Super clean. And then obviously front fender too. So excited about how that came out for, you know, not a whole lot of cost involved. I had the clear, I had the stickers custom made, but not too big of an expense there. And I think it really adds a nice touch. Really pays a tribute to Nick and to his family. So yeah. That being said, I think that it's time to bring this thing home. Let's get the tank and fenders on, get my lighting back on, clean up all the wires, make this thing 100%, call this mini bike done. Whew, almost there. Let's get back to work. Well, here she is, the finished product, 100% complete, and I could not be more over the moon about how this thing came out. The whole thing just looks like a brand new bike. I mean, it still looks the same, but also 100% different, if that makes any sense. I mean, compared to the way this thing came to me, to now is just such a transformation. Like I said, really the only thing that's still visible is the patina on the tank and the fenders, which, by the way, I think absolutely makes this bike. The extra gloss, the custom decals honoring Nick and his grandfather, and the purple foxes just really brings this whole thing together. The red wheels, which is exactly how John put it together back in the 50s with some updated lighting, tuned up the motor and the carburetor, spark plug, runs awesome. New fuel lines, fuel filter, grips, all new controls, new seat. Just basically went through this thing top to bottom, down to the bare frame, and I mean, you guys saw, runs and rides awesome. It's super loud, just as you'd expect for a 1950s chainsaw, but oh yeah, new tires with a more off-road style tire for where Nick's family kind of lives now, down a dirt road. This thing is ready to roll. So yeah, like I said, I am so excited and proud of how this thing came out. I think Nick's family is going to be just so excited about it as well. I cannot wait to see the reaction. But yeah, now that it is 100% done, I know we already took it on a test ride, but let's take it for a ride down the road, see how it looks, see how it drives. This thing is a freaking blast. It is super loud, super dangerous, but a ton of fun. I think that's gonna do it as far as the bike is concerned. The only thing left to do is to give it back to Nick's family, see their reaction. They haven't seen it in at least a year at this point. I got it in the fall, but I think that they gave it to the other kid earlier in the summer. So it's been a year. Last time they saw it, it looked, you know, how it did when we got it. So I'm probably gonna be heading up to their house on the lake in a week or so. So I'll see you guys then. We'll load this thing up, we'll ride it down the road, see what they think about this. All right guys, so it's a couple weeks later, finally made it up to my parents' house, which is down the street from Nick's parents' house. So what we're gonna do is Maggie is gonna film and I'm gonna ride down and we're gonna get Nick's parents' reaction to the mini bike now that it's all done. So let's see how it goes.
This is freaking amazing! Oh, look at this!
So that's your dad's name on that side. I have purple boxes there.
Boxes here.
And then Nick's name's on this side.
Oh.
Pretty cool, huh?
Oh.
Pretty great. You like it?
Dad. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Very
so
sweet.
I took it down.
This looks like a new seat.
It's a new seat.
Oh yeah.
It's a new seat. This is a trailer light. I had to make this belt. The wheels were originally red. Just
Yes,
like
yes,
your
I
dad
do.
would have painted them, so I redid them red. Painted the frame. I clear coated all the patina because I thought that's kind of cool.
Gosh.
This is actually a Harley Davidson headlight.
No!
Yep. And I put like dirt tires on it because you live on a dirt road.
This is what just runs the light?
This is a little generator.
So that's all new, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yep. There's really.
This.
I rebuilt the car.
So is this street legal?
No. I think so. Just don't ask.
Okay, I got drive it.
All right, I got to start.
Okay.
Like I said, so
Yeah.
the pull cord was over here. I fixed it like 3 times, and I'm trying to locate a new one, but they're hard to get. Mwah. Love you.
Love you too.
Oh god. Woo! Break! Chris! Help her! We almost went into the rocks. Oh my god. Jesus Christ, Suze.
Bad woman.
You did it!
That's exactly as I remember it. A little bit
You're
better.
going fast!
What?
You're going fast.
I had it full throttle.
We heard you going.
All right, guys. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for the mini bike video. I hope you enjoyed watching this thing come from basically a pile of parts to what I think is as good or better than the bike was when John built it back in the 50s. Give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Leave all your comments down below. Consider donating to the Captain John Sax Foundation. I'll leave a link down below. As I stated earlier in the video, all of the proceeds from this video will be donated to that foundation, which is going to educate and help young aviators in our country. With any luck, the foundation will help to create more badass pilots like Nick and his grandfather John. Thank you guys again for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. All right, where are the beers?